Hello, everybody. Welcome to the DePIN podcast. I'm your host, Tom Trowbridge. We're excited to bring you interviews with the key founders in the DePIN landscape, investors, and ecosystem partners. This is an exciting time for DePIN, and this year we're going to be meeting even more founders, learning about the projects that they're building, about the traction they're getting, and about the revenue that they're generating. The podcast is brought to you by Fluence. Fluence is building a decentralized compute platform. It's a project I'm a co-founder of and really excited about. So buckle up for this year. Please subscribe to the channel, listen to us on Spotify or Apple. And of course, if you are around any of the large conferences, come to our DePIN Day, where you can meet these founders on the Fluence team in person and hear from all the ecosystem partners as well. So look forward to seeing you in person, and let's get going on this podcast. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the DePIN podcast. I'm your host, Tom Trowbridge. I'm thrilled to have today here Jason Brink, co-founder of Datagram. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, Tom. Nice to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Love to hear more about what you're doing. You're building a decentralized, infrastructure network, and that can encompass lots of different things. So could you kind of dive in and tell us what that means?
Sure. I'd be more than happy to. I'm going to tweak that a little bit. There's a really big problem sort of in the DePIN space, in that the vast majority of DePIN projects out there are essentially vaporware. Okay. This is sort of the starting point that I began when I came and I helped to co-found Datagram, because I looked at all of the various DePINs that were out there and found that the vast majority of them were essentially to be completely honest, we're basically just heartbeat machines that were an excuse to distribute tokens. Most of them didn't do anything. And so what I decided to do was to, help to build a network that actually does stuff. Nodes that do stuff is kind of our call sign. Datagram is essentially a network that handles a tremendous amount of traffic. We do a significant amount of Web 2 traffic. We operate what I refer to as a protocol to business to consumer pipeline. So our main focus is as a protocol helping businesses run decentralized networks that they can then serve resources from to their users. We handle voice and video via UDP. We're getting ready to deploy the TCP connectivity for storage and app hosting and things like that. You can kind of look at us as a decentralized AWS competitor, if you will. And I've been building networks like this for a very long time. Previously, in my past life, my last project, we handled about 85% of all DHT routing across IPFS, across our node network. And now I'm taking some of the philosophy behind what that was supposed to be and helping to build out a better and more robust network that does more stuff. And that's where we are.
Listen, there is a lot to get into. But you mentioned your background. So let's hit the background, because I think the discussion of what you're doing is going to take there's a lot more to unpack there in a lot of different ways.
There's a lot. Okay, so I've been in blockchain for a long time. I originally got involved in 2012, 2013, specifically looking at how blockchain can be used as a way to fix some of the problems endemic to foreign aid. I had done some disaster relief work prior to that specifically in Haiti. And while I was in Haiti, I saw some of the problems that people were facing. And so I went from there and decided to, try to solve those using blockchain. I created a project called the Aid Dollar, which was it was actually the very first theoretical asset-backed stablecoin, but to be used specifically for foreign aid purposes. I won an award from the Global Development Network and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for that. Spent a couple of years trying to turn that in. That was in 2014.
Wow, that was before the word stablecoin barely existed, huh?
It predated Tether by a few months. Tether came out a few months after I did this. There's no relationship between the two. I don't mean to imply that I'm somehow brilliant and ahead of the thing or anything. I'm not. It was just a thing that I thought would be an interesting way to solve the problem. Because I mean, like in Haiti, we would have problems where millions and millions and millions of dollars were flowing into the country, but none of it was getting to the people that actually needed it. People were dying of starvation because there was no food and there was no money, even though everybody was sending food and money there. It was just kind of being redirected, I guess, is a really nice way to put it. And so, I wanted to fix that. So, I came up with the $8. I tried for a couple years to make that work. What I discovered, though, unfortunately, is that governments and NGOs are rather singularly disinterested in transparency. It's not really a thing of great interest to them because I didn't know this at the time when I started, but that's how they make their money, by kind of peeling stuff off and sending it on its way to their accounts. So I kind of left that behind. I joined a few different projects, primarily from like a marketing type perspective. I helped write white papers and things like that. I guess one of my superpowers is to help take highly technical concepts and break them down into easy, understandable pieces for people. And so that was kind of my focus. A couple years after that, I helped to get a project called Gala off the ground. I don't know if you're familiar with Gala. I was the 8th employee there and sort of one of the philosophical founders, not one of the technical founders behind it, unfortunately. But that was where we built out the Gala Founders Node network, which handled 85% of all DHT routing across IPFS, which is quite an accomplishment in my mind. That Gala decided to go in sort of a different direction, and didn't want to focus so much on the DePIN angle of things. And so after I left Gala a couple of years ago, oh my God, it's almost a couple of years ago now. After I left Gala a couple of years ago, I decided I really wanted to focus on DePIN and decentralized and distributed networks. And so I got together with Dr. William, my co-founder at Datagram, and we created Datagram. And it is based on the idea that, we want to build out something that makes DePIN real for people. Because, I found that the majority of DePIN projects out there have massive amounts of excess capacity that isn't being tapped in any way, shape, or form because they don't have any users. We, on the other hand, started with a couple million Web 2 users that have no idea that they're using decentralized infra. And we could then help other DePIN projects to monetize their own networks by creating what we call the Datagram core substrate. And essentially, the Datagram core substrate is something that any DePIN project can integrate for free. It handles all uptime and usage tracking of their DePIN network, and then we're able then to also use their network for routing and for all of the things that our DePIN does as well. And so essentially it just makes DePIN better and more accessible for everybody, and reduces rather dramatically the development timeline for people who are working within the DePIN space who want to build something.
Listen, there's a ton there. I think I want to back up to the Gala part, because
Sure.
you expressed let's just say frustration and skepticism of DePIN overall, right? And so you obviously were working closely with IPFS, which is the
We
technology.
weren't. That was the fun thing. We were using the tech, but we had no. I mean, now we do. Now, when I say now, I have connections with the guys over at IP Shipyard, which handle IPFS today. But at the time, we were just using it, and we had integrated it because it was, kind of a way that I wanted to, how do I say this? I wanted to find a better way to contribute more deeply to IPFS, or to decentralization in general, and contributing to IPFS seemed to be a great way to do that. So we built the basic IPFS workload into our Founders Node ecosystem. And we had, I think at peak, pretty close to 35, 40,000 nodes. We were supporting IPFS, but without really any communication with IPFS, which was kind of interesting.
Well, no, I guess what I was driving at is, IPFS, for just to back up for people who aren't, everyone who's watching this should be highly familiar with it, but it is the Interplanetary File System, which is the technology associated with Filecoin, right? And so that is, one of the DePIN before DePIN existed projects, one of the two kind of up there with Helium and Render that were kind of the main foundational projects. And I guess my question to you is, it took a while for that to be functional, and is that some of the frustrations you think about
No,
related
not at all.
to that or other projects?
No, it's other projects. It's not IPFS. It's not Render. There's a lot of really great DePIN projects out there that actually do real work. The guys over at Aether do some really cool stuff. The Helium guys obviously do some cool stuff. Their deal that they recently structured, I want to say with I forget which telecom it was. I think it's like AT&T or something like that. Like they're doing real work. But my issue is that there's a huge number of projects out there that sold nodes because nodes are a way for people to raise money. Okay. And then those nodes don't do anything other than emit tokens. Okay. And so you end up with what is fundamentally a broken incentive system and a broken tokenomic structure that just doesn't actually do the things that it needs to do. And that's more the point of concern, if that makes sense.
Yeah, listen, I think you need to read my DePIN token economics paper, which I put out earlier this year, I think in February and March, that goes through a lot of this, although it probably doesn't talk much about the projects that have, let's just phrase it, unsustainable token economics. So I think I'd love to get your opinions on it. I'm going to send you after the show if you haven't seen it.
Please. I would love to.
I think we're aligned on this. But then to Datagram, to dig into that a little bit more, because I have a sense as to where you're coming from, which is a huge amount of experience. And what I love about DePIN founders, you're kind of think uniquely. A lot of DePIN founders I talk to have subject matter and domain expertise, and discover that DePIN is a way to best scale and grow out their networks. And this is primarily in physical DePINs, right? Flight tracking, all this stuff. But you actually come from an interesting one where you come from domain expertise in DePIN in a way, from this past experience, and are now deploying something and building something you think is better. So that is not like your second gen in a way, right? And that is is rare to find in the space.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. It's been quite the freaking journey, I'll tell you what.
Well, I believe it. Now tell me about this network, because you have to dumb it down a little bit, because it is a lot of DePINs are B2B, right? That is, I think, one of the benefits of DePIN versus some of the centralized companies like an Uber or a Airbnb, et cetera, from the Web 2 world, right? And we can talk about the attributes of being B2B all day long, but you're B2B, but you're almost even a layer above that in a sense. And so I kind of want you to explain a little bit more about what this infrastructure means and provides in a little bit more detail, because I think that's a little bit harder for people to grasp, is kind of the complication of it.
Let me see if I can break it down. So the first thing is that and I'm going to take it back to basic principles for a second. We're just going to leave blockchain out of this altogether. Okay. I personally believe that we get more done if we work together, and that we will accomplish more if we help one another rather than sort of try to knock each other down. What I found when I did a deep dive into sort of the DePINs that were available in the market, and you can use the term DePIN very loosely. Okay, somebody who is using some sort of physical infrastructure to decentralize some sort of thing. Okay, whatever it happens to be. I've seen DePINs based around logistics. I've seen DePINs based around music, around gaming, around whatever, right? You have physical infrastructure that is deployed, that is running nodes, okay, that is run by your community in many cases. And you are trying to create something that will enable this process to be more robust than it would be if it were based on centralized infrastructure, right? So, for example,
I mean, back up.
let's
More. It could be.
sure,
There are a variety of value propositions: cheaper,
correct,
more robust, less subject to single points of failure. That's somewhat like robust, or censorship resistant, or
correct.
you could. There's a number of attributes.
All of these things, but what I found is that the majority of these were not actually meeting their goals in terms of decentralization of what they were building. Okay, then there's a couple reasons for that. The first reason is that a large number of people were, or a large number of projects rather, and I'm going to set aside also the ones that are just absolute terrible bullshit. I don't know if I can say that and be slightly spicy, but like we're just gonna like if you have a DePIN network. No, I'm not here. I don't want to get in. I don't want to get into Twitter war here.
Right.
But there are projects that are just not good projects, and they were never really intended to be good projects, and people use them as a means to extract, right? And that's not. I'm not talking about that.
But that's crypto, right? That's crypto 101.
It is. Part of it is definitely crypto 101, which is very disappointing and frustrating and exhausting for all of us who are actually trying to build things, right? So there's that. Now, the other thing that I found is that a large number of the good projects that were actually trying to build something had domain expertise in whatever the thing was that they were trying to build, but not necessarily in DePIN. Okay, so for example, decentralized music, they know all about music. They all know all about streaming. They know all about, whatever it is. But DePIN itself is kind of a different beast, right? It's not easy to build a decentralized network that actually meets these criteria. So kind of starting from that as a first principle, what we did is we're like, okay, so what do we need to do to help them? Okay. Let's not talk about the fact that they haven't managed to do whatever it was that they set out to do yet, but instead let's talk about, okay, how do we help them do what they're trying to do? And this is where having our Datagram core substrate comes in, right? How do we build out something that they can then tap into that will give them access to uptime and usage statistics on their own node network in a way that's better than just having nodes that are pinging in and being recorded in MongoDB, which is what a lot of them are doing right now. And so this is where we sort of started with that. And so starting from that as a initial first point that we were pushing towards, really sort of changed the perspective for us on how to do this, because it's more about how do we help people and less about how do we sort of create and monetize our own network. We've managed to do that, of course, because we have our own customers, we have our own things like that. But how can we further contribute and help in a good way for other people?
And so give us more, dig into a little bit more in terms of what that means. Because that
sure.
sounds great, but it's a little high level.
Okay, so let's talk about token distributions. Okay.
Well, first a service you guys are providing.
Well, this is kind of tied to it. So you take the you have a DePIN network, right? And well, I'm not saying you, okay, but an individual has a DePIN network that has these sort of lofty goals, okay, but your implementation is focused on the thing that you care about, okay. And again, I'll use music as an example, right? Your implementation's focused on music because that's the thing that or this individual knows, right? They don't know necessarily the DePIN side of it. So what we do is we build a product, okay, that they can take and they can bundle it as a package into their node software, okay? Their node software continues to do whatever it is that their node software does, okay? Serve music, make connections, messaging, whatever it is that your node software does. But in addition to that, you've now added in our software package. And what our software package does is it tracks what your software package is essentially doing. Okay, so if you're serving content, it's keeping track of what content is being served. If you're tracking uptime and statistics, it keeps track of those uptime and statistics and records all of those onto a blockchain, onto our blockchain, which is an L1 built on AVAX. Then on top of that, what it does is we make this data available to you. Okay, so you can then go into our dashboard essentially, and you could look at the activity across your entire node network and use this as a foundation for distributing rewards or distributing tokens, in a way that is now transparent and on chain. So any of your community that wants to see what the uptime is on the network and see why, node A received a greater distribution than node, B or D or whatever, they can go and look and see the differences there on chain in a way that they can't do if it's just based on Mongo or whatever.
So it's effectively adding transparency to the node distribution or the token distribution algorithms that every DePIN effectively deploys.
Correct.
And I guess that that certainly is interesting. I guess the question is, projects. Is that a design? So do you view yourselves as a DePIN or a service provider to DePINs? Because in a way, we're
really both.
Or DePINs.
We're really both because we provide a service for DePINs. We provide, and in addition to providing that service for DePINs, we're also taking that entire. So you have 5 different networks, right? Those 5 different networks, okay, are now interconnected with one another via the Datagram core substrate. So the network efficiency of your network actually increases because of the number of connections. So project A, right, now connecting, they have a node network of, say, 50,000 nodes. Those 50,000 nodes, if you have 5 projects of 50,000 nodes, you now have 250,000 nodes, but the number of connections between them increases. So it actually improves the efficiency of each of those networks because they're now interoperating amongst one another, if that makes sense. And on top of that, you're also monetizing that network by allowing our traffic to pass through it as well. So if your DePIN network that is, for music is not getting as much traction as you would like, you're also potentially receiving rewards from operating, for and serving content for our users. And that can either be on an individual basis to the individual operators of the nodes or on a project basis. So it becomes something where your sort of main account, if you will, is receiving all of the sorry, they're actually mixing drinks back there now. So all of the content gets served, and you potentially have an additional income stream for your project as a whole.
When you say, just so I get it, that means you're saying if the music DePIN or whatever it is those nodes then can serve additional purposes and earn additional rewards that can come from the other projects that are part of the Datagram network.
Right now, it's just Datagram. So you would only receive additional rewards from Datagram for stuff that you do for Datagram. But
and what kind of things do you do for Datagram?
I mean, you could be, serving content. You could be, facilitating UDP connections. So, we have an entire, essentially a Zoom or Google Meet competitor that operates across Datagram via UDP, and it is very, very clear and sharp and clean and actually functions. And you can go to demo.datagram.network and try it today if you want. And that's what the majority of our actual B2B clients in the Web 2 space use. Because it is very secure and works very well. So it sees pretty heavy use. And so if your node is serving that, then you would be receiving rewards from that.
So the other way to look at it is you have your own DePIN project focused on,
Correct.
which almost B2B or even B2C, but connectivity, video, audio content. And then the service that you're providing to other DePINs helps you scale your network to
Correct.
provide better service as well. And
Bingo.
out
Yes.
of curiosity, are you familiar with Huddle 01?
Yes, I am. People always say, "Are you guys Huddle? Are you guys Huddle?
Right.
You're just like Huddle. You're just like Huddle." No, we are nothing like Huddle. Huddle's kind of interesting because everything they do still runs through IPFS as their connectivity layer. So Dr. William is freaking brilliant, and the way that he handles network topology is just insane. And we are the only project that I am aware of that has managed to get consistent function via UDP for real-time communication in video and audio. It's pretty impressive.
That's amazing. But I mean, I think Huddle. It sounds like you have a different solution for sure than Huddle, but they're providing a similar service at least.
Yeah, I mean, sure, in that regard. But I think, I mean, there's a lot of people that provide that service in a variety of different ways, and there's obviously well, how do I say this diplomatically? There's a particular well-known, and again, I really don't want to name names, but anyone who's worked in sort of like TradFi or B2B is familiar with particular software package that a particular giant has deployed out there for real-time video communications. That's absolute crap. You know exactly what I'm talking about, but I don't feel like receiving nasty grams from anyone.
I throw a fit whenever I'm forced to use it. So
yes.
Yes.
But I had the best experience with it. It was the only time it actually did what I wanted, which was to absolutely shit the bed when I was talking to a potential investor. And I was like, guys, why don't we, since the whole point of this call is for me to tell you what we do, why don't I just go ahead and send you a link to our own thing, and you can see that, because nobody could connect to this particular service at that time. So it worked out quite nicely.
That's terrific. What's and then help me understand attributes of the service you guys are offering, because it sounds like you've already articulated it's far faster, so it's faster with no latency. Or low latency.
Well,
low latency, I'm imagining it's a lot cheaper as well. Like, how do you think about that? Other attributes.
It is a lot cheaper. It is on a usage basis right now. So essentially, if you're a Web 2 customer and you come to us, we essentially establish the account and we keep the accounts topped up for you to, so you're paying a flat fee. We do have other models that are, straight up usage-based models where you can just go and if you were a consumer, if you're sort of a Web3 native and you want to jump in and use it yourself, from a token perspective, it is very cheap, but very, very high quality. So it's cheaper than you would get if you were to use any of the sort of mainstream competitors. And then on top of that, and this is kind of an interesting thing, because of the very unique architecture and the way that the signal moves through our node network, you can have up to, I mean, we've tested it at well over 10,000 participants in a room, which is kind of crazy. And, good luck trying to do that with any of the other mainstream competitors out there, if that makes sense.
So that's just fascinating. And just out of curiosity, just to knock it off on the pricing, are you 20% cheaper, 50%? How do you think about just quantum of pricing?
70 to 90% cheaper.
Awesome. Okay. So it's far cheaper, and it has, and this is what I love about DePIN, with far cheaper with a superior service in terms of latency and speed, and then having features, i.e. number of users, that others do not have. Right. So that potentially gets you appropriate for all kinds of use cases never before been possible even.
Correct. It's typically right now the majority of our clients in the B2B space are governments, academic institutions, things like that. Because the other very special thing about this is if you're using any of those major providers, your communication is bouncing through a centralized server. And that centralized server has then the ability to do whatever that centralized server wants to do. And you can't stop that centralized server from doing any of those things that it's deciding to do. So, when like, for example, we're doing this call right now. This call, and this is obviously a different scenario since the whole point of this is for recording and later dissemination, right? If you were to have a hypercritical, very secure communication that you would need to have, you would be insane to do it through any of those major centralized providers because, they then have the ability to, snoop and listen in and whatnot. The fact that people, conduct things that are, mission critical deal flow conversations with some of these things still blows my mind.
Well, it sounds like there's a variety of people in a number of governments that could up their security stance with this for sure.
Yes.
And then talk about the customers' revenue. How do you quantify it? How do you think about that? And then
it's kind of a difficult thing because for us as a protocol, our goal is not necessarily to make money. It's to build something that works, right? We need to eat, okay, and we need to continue to survive, obviously. But the usage is not about us making money. Okay, so this is kind of an interesting thing about this because anytime you use our service, the tokens that are paid in that are burns. Okay, every single time. There is not we're not shaving off, for ourselves. And so anytime that's actually anything hitting the protocol is fully a burn, because that's the only way that we can make sure that the node network continues to receive its allocation, long into the future, because otherwise you end up with a situation where tokens just get emitted and they just sit there and do nothing, and everyone has to worry about the project dumping, and it's unpleasant. Can we say that? So
for sure
we try to avoid that.
Right. And of course, but that doesn't, that's sort of how do I phrase this the right way? That doesn't answer the question really, because in order to have those tokens burned, people have to use the service. To use the service, you have to have customers who have to pay for it. So you still, the front end of it is still customers who are signing up and using
Correct.
it, right?
Correct.
And so how do you think about number of customers or number of minutes used, or what are the metrics you're kind of, can share on it?
So basically what we do with our B2B customers, okay, is basically they have SLAs with us, okay? And those SLAs, we provide a certain amount of service. Those are, usually 2 to 3 year contracts. And we provide whatever it is that they need for whatever scale that they need. And they are paying us in fiat. We then take that fiat, buy tokens, okay, and then burn those tokens to give them
buy and burn. Yeah. And love it. And of course, that's the 80 or you sounds like you're 100% buy and burn. Is that right? Or close to it?
100% buy and burn. 100%.
Love. I mean, that's you will see it in the report. That's obviously a key way for token value creation to scale with the network. But that goes back to the question on to help people understand the scale of what this is or what it could become. Let me ask the question differently. If you fast forward, 5 years, 3 years, whatever time frame you're comfortable talking about, what are metrics that you are that would make this a big success in your mind? Is it, we have 1,000 customers that are spending, I don't know, 10,000, 50,000 a month on this in aggregate? Is it 1 million? Like, is it a number of minutes? How can you sort of gauge some scale of where would make you very happy for Datagram to have achieved?
Right now, we have about 400 B2B customers, just over 400 companies that are working with us.
That's enormous.
It's very substantial. It's very substantial. And those 400 customers, those are primarily based in Southeast Asia. And again, a lot of academic institutions, a lot of companies, sort of government organizations and things like that as well. For me, what I would like to see over time is we're building this entire thing so that you or a random person, okay, can go out and bring customers in. Okay, we don't feel that we should have sort of a blessed space in the ecosystem, if that makes sense. We run the protocol, but anyone can do what we are doing other than some of the protocol stuff that's actually required to keep, sort of the lights on. So we've built this entire thing so that you could say, okay, what I'm going to do is, I'm DePIN, so I'm going to go ahead and offer this particular service. Okay, we white label what we provide. So if you wanted to have, the DePIN real-time communication network, you could white label what we're doing, charge people whatever it is that you feel like charging them. Let's say you give them a 50% discount off of whatever they're paying. They're paying you in fiat. Okay, so DePIN goes out and talks to, another 100 customers. You get those 100 customers that are all working through the DePIN network, right? And they're paying you in fiat. You're taking that fiat and you're doing the exact same thing we do, where you're buying and burning to allow them to access services. This keeps it very clean. This keeps it very straightforward, and makes it so that the network can scale via community involvement, if that makes sense. The reason that we decided to do it this way is because if you take a look at, if you take a look at Amazon, right? The reason that Amazon is successful, and we're talking Amazon, the store that you buy shit, okay? Let's leave AWS out of it for a second. You take Amazon, the store that you buy stuff from, the reason that it was successful was not because Jeff Bezos wanted an online bookstore, okay? The reason it was successful was because Jeff Bezos said, people want to sell stuff online. It's hard for people to sell stuff online. They want to go to one place to buy everything that they buy. So I'm going to create Amazon. Now you go to Amazon today, and you purchase whatever it is that you want to purchase. Okay. You're going through a single interface. Okay. But you may actually be buying, from, 10 different vendors, and the fulfillment by Amazon system, okay, makes that entire thing extremely, straightforward for you as a consumer. And so that's what we saw. We're like, okay, how do we make it so that I can use my DePIN to make your business more successful? And if we make your business more successful, our network is more successful by default. And so that's essentially how we approach this entire thing. I was going to say, so to answer your question, what would make me happy in, a few years' time is I'd like to have another 100 organizations, okay, that are out there under their own brands reselling the variety of services that we offer, okay, to any number of B2B customers. And then the end users simply use those services without any knowledge or awareness of us or what we're doing, because honestly, it doesn't matter as long as it works. You've never opened Uber or Grab or, whatever in your entire life and thought, gosh, AWS is just absolutely on fire today. Great. Doesn't matter to you. You're using Uber. That's the only thing that you care about. And so that's the direction that we've taken this.
Well, listen, I get that for sure I think you're speaking about of services beyond just the
Yes,
calling
yes.
and video.
Yes, absolutely.
But even if you're doing just the calling and video, that is also super powerful because you're basically allowing anyone to become, your price point is so low that there's plenty of room for margin for
Correct.
anyone
Exactly.
that has distribution to create their own business, right? AARP could offer an AARP, conference call to all their members, right?
Exactly.
Like you name any community group, right? Now they have a new revenue stream and they're saving their community money, right? Like that's
exactly.
That's pretty interesting.
That's exactly where we want to go with this.
Super cool. Now, what other services you implied, you used the Amazon example, implying that there's other services that you guys offer or will offer on top of the video and voice?
At the end of the day, things that are up right now, we also have a VPN network that is based on our nodes. That application was just approved Nobody even knows this yet. I haven't told anyone, but no, that was just approved today for both Google Play and the iStore. So you can download the Datagram VPN. Okay, so that's one thing. And that is industry standard sort of VPN setup. Anything ultimately at the end of the day, anything that you use AWS for, whether it's container deployment, hosting, all of that, all of those things are things that we will in the long term provide.
That's a lot of stuff. Which is that definitely is exciting.
Also decentralized inference for AI and stuff like that. That's online as well already.
Oh, just that little thing.
Yeah, it's that little thing. Inference for AI is really a fascinating concept. I absolutely can't get enough of it.
Well, related to that, then I guess you guys, I think recently have launched or have closed a node sale. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So we have a node sale that's live right now. The market is kind of garbage for node sales at this exact moment. For a number of reasons. Again, it's a lot of it boils down to sort of I look forward to reading your tokenomics paper, but a lot of people have gotten really wrecked by these terrible things out there. So very, very, very much fatigue. But I think it's interesting because it's fatigue, but it's fatigue because nobody's built the shit that they've said that they were going to build. Nobody has products that work. So people are buying all of these, these nodes. And there's this terrible, how do I put it? There's this terrible push within sort of the DePIN community to build and deploy things that are as low powered as possible. And we even see this with like airdrop farmers and things like that in our own Discord, where people are like, well, when is there going to be a mobile version of your node? And it's like, guys, that's a terrible idea. That's an absolutely terrible idea. You should not do that. It will not work. That's that's the thing. So anyway, the node sale is live right now. And it is it's working. It's not picking up all of the sales that I would like, but it is working.
Well, listen, on the nodes, tell me about the economics, because you've talked about that a lot. So what does the node do? How much does it cost? How do the rewards work? Because that's obviously a key piece of, I'm sure you've spent a lot of time on that architecture.
So TLDR, the nodes are relatively inexpensive right now. I think they're available for $400 or something like that at the moment. They receive in aggregate 50% of the daily distribution. So we have a model that is, not completely uncommon, where essentially a number of tokens are emitted. We refer to it as the latent supply. So you essentially have your, max supply, which is, whatever it is, and then your total supply, and whatever that gap is between the two, 0.125% of that is emitted on a daily basis. So long tail emissions, correct. Decreasing. It could theoretically increase, but only with paired burn. So you would have to, burn and move it back down the distribution curve, or back up the distribution curve rather. So it's a fairly, that part is fairly straightforward. The distribution of the tokens right now is 75% uptime, 25% usage based. Although in time that will transition more and more. It basically stays that way for at least the first year post TGE, and then we'll begin slowly transitioning to more usage based. The reason for this is I came up with a concept years ago that's called the entrepreneurial metagame. And the idea is that it's understanding that the people who operate hardware are sometimes different than the people who operate nodes. And in this case, it was, for gaming. And the people that buy NFTs for games are sometimes different than the people who actually play the games and use those NFTs. This is where you have like the Axie scholarship model comes into play and things like that. So Basically what it does, though, is if you look at things from this perspective, you create the necessity for node operators to run good nodes where good nodes are needed. What we don't want is for everybody to deploy their nodes on, $8 AWS containers, because that makes for a shit DePIN, if you understand, right? Like having your entire decentralized infrastructure running inside of an AWS data center is not what you want. So because we have the shift towards usage-based metrics, what it does is it allows us to have a better sort of handle on making sure that the people who are operating the nodes are both putting them up in a location that they'll actually receive usage. And then also the cool thing about that is it allows users to drive usage to their own nodes. Okay, so, you can run nodes. Okay, let's say you establish, you said you're in Amsterdam right now, right? You're hanging out in rainy Amsterdam. You want to build a business, okay, that uses the Datagram ecosystem, right? So you start doing that. And then you realize, well, crap, there's only a few nodes in Amsterdam right now. And you can find out exactly how many nodes there are in Amsterdam, by the way, if you look at our node map. I'm driving tons of usage, but we don't have tons of nodes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set up another 15 nodes scattered throughout Amsterdam, so that if somebody needs to use this service, the likelihood that they're going to connect to my node is much higher, and then I will receive the rewards of that. And so it basically creates a system where that sort of behavior is incentivized. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, we all have to work on this together for it to work. It's kind of central to the ethos of Web3, if that makes sense.
No, it does. But onto those economics, for whatever period is, there is a set number of tokens which is distributed. And that is distributed equally among 75% of that's distributed equally among every node that has met the uptime criteria.
Correct.
And the 25% of that is then allocated to all those nodes somehow based on the amount of usage.
Correct.
And so it's not an absolute, but relative amount of usage, right? If every node has 0 usage and one node is used, it gets all of it, as an extreme example.
It doesn't actually work out.
The extremes help people understand things.
Sure. In that case, it doesn't actually work like that. So if there is no usage, that 25% just basically sits there and then gets distributed on a per unit basis for the usage.
Fine. But if 10 nodes are 90% of the use, those 10 nodes would get 90% of the 25%.
It's still not quite. So basically, if you look at it, and it's the usage portion of things is pegged to actual usage in the ecosystem, right? So if you have nodes that are burning, or if users are burning X amount of tokens, then that amount of tokens could potentially be released based on usage. Okay, so if usage is 0, okay, even if there's, or almost 0, let's say there's just a tiny amount of usage, then only a tiny number of tokens would be distributed based on that. And that 25% would essentially sit in a pool that is there to pay out when there is high usage, if that makes sense.
Fair enough. But then I guess what I'm driving at is to look at the other way. But then your usage was 25% of a fixed amount, but you talked about that's usage reward, but usage reward, as you said, is the amount of tokens being burned by usage. So those are two different numbers arrived at different ways. Your 25% could be 1 million tokens, and then you could burn 3 million based on a high usage, whatever day, hour, whatever it is. So now how do those two things link up?
So then basically what happens is, we do not assume that there is necessarily going to be enough usage to consume those tokens. So again, they sit in a pool. If it gets to the point where that pool is depleted, then it does get distributed sort of amongst everything based on a per unit basis. So essentially, usage, everything is counted in points, right? So and that points is maybe not the right way to put it, but when you use a service, okay, you take Dgram tokens and you burn those Dgram tokens and you're given data credits, okay? Those data credits are essentially, I don't want to use the term they're a stable coin because they're not a stable coin, but they're simply a point that is on the blockchain pegged to a certain fiat value. Okay, they are not tradable.
Helium does
They're not
something
exchangeable.
similar.
Very, very similar to how Helium handled it. Yes. And then when you actually use those tokens, you burn the data, and the node that provides the service receives essentially a counter token that says they provided X amount of service. Okay, so if they were providing UDP, okay, for real-time communication, they would receive a token called UDP. At the end of every day, okay, those UDP tokens are settled, okay, back to Dgram on a 3-day moving average. Okay, so if you received, $10 worth of UDP, okay, then that $10 worth of UDP, you would receive $10 worth of Dgram tokens, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. And I'm trying to figure out how that makes it deflationary down the road.
The deflationary down the road comes from the other side of the equation. The
The
deflationary down the road
75%
comes
getting
from,
down.
well,
That going down.
the what's being emitted gradually trails off. Okay, so both the 75% and the 25% get smaller over time, right? Via a long tail curve reduction. As those tokens are used, okay, as things are depleted, essentially, you would eventually reach a point where the emission and the burn match. Okay, so you reach a steady state. Okay, and then as that steady state is maintained, okay, and who knows exactly where on the curve that would be, as that roughly steady state is maintained, your usage percentage grows over time while your uptime percentage decreases. That doesn't kick off until after the first year, because we know that people need to do math and whatnot. But that is essentially how that works out.
Interesting. Okay. And how many nodes? What's your target for sales, and how much is each node?
The nodes are essentially being sold in, and this is this is a rather more complex structure than I initially wanted, but there were other people that pushed for this model. So essentially they are in 3 different tranches, and within each of those or 3 different tiers rather, and within each of those tiers there's 4 tranches. One of the other things that we kind of created with this is a concept called the capsule. And what the capsule is essentially a vesting mechanism for tokens. And if you we can talk about that later if you want, but it's not really important. But the main thing is that the first tier is just the node, and then the second and third tiers also receive a capsule that has potentially a certain number of tokens in it already, which then vest over the course of a year.
And how much are the nodes?
They are different prices in each tier. I think it starts off at like 400, 600, 800. And I think we're half of the way through the first we're through the first 2 tranches in the first tier, the first tranche in the second tier, and the first tranche in the third tier. So it's like currently available for like 500, 650, and maybe
Okay, fine.
750 or
Ballpark.
something
Understand.
like that. Yeah, it's somewhere in that neighborhood.
Excellent. And are there geographies that is it up to people what geographies they want, or is that just kind of contingent on them based on usage?
It's contingent on them. Right now, most people, and again, this is like the of DePIN right now. Most people are looking at it primarily from the uptime perspective, but then as the balance begins to shift, then it is the hope that people will look at it more from a usage perspective and start deploying in areas that make more sense.
Gotcha.
In terms of reward distribution.
Interesting. This is I think we could spend another 2 hours going through a whole bunch of stuff here, but I
I
am
would love to invite you here and let's do this in person, and we
I
can do that.
well, I was there a year ago. We was at DevCon, and so we
Oh, were
missed a
you?
chance to do it there. We had a whole DePIN day at DevCon.
Oh
You missed it. We
man.
had 500 people there, everybody. Um,
No, and I didn't miss it. We didn't. I don't think we bumped into each other. DevCon was a nightmare for me, man.
yeah,
Terrible.
I believe it. I believe it.
As the local person, right? Because I've lived here for like 15 years. It was my job to play host to everyone who was coming in for the first time. Nightmare, absolute nightmare. I would like, oh my God, I didn't get home until like 4 in the morning every single day, and I have two children, and the funny thing is that they don't care how
yes.
late you stayed
No,
up. They are
I know
not at
that
all
very
interested.
well. Don't
So
not
it's like
phase.
I'm on the couch and it's like, Daddy, why do you smell funny? Can you make me cereal now? Um, it's like, okay,
Yeah,
fine.
I know that too well. Um, well, but I do want to end with a couple questions though for you. Like, first of all, we talked about a couple projects, other projects in DePIN that you like, follow, think are real and interesting. Any ones you want to call out?
I like what Aether is doing. I know the guys over there fairly well. The I'm very interested in decentralized AI compute, specifically for inference. I think it's really interesting because and there's other stuff that I'm working on in this particular vicinity as well. But I think that the decentralized inference is going to be a very, very, very important thing over the next few years. And so Aether is really working hard on that. I think that what they're doing is some pretty cool stuff. I like them. I like oh man, there's so many interesting projects
Have you
out there.
followed Jensen?
Jensen?
Yeah,
No, I have
you
not.
you
Is
should
that a
look it up.
project or is that an
Yeah,
individual? Okay, I'll
big
check.
time. I mean, A16Z funded, decentralized, inference, exactly what you're talking about. Live now, top. It's I think the leader in that space from what I can tell.
Okay, I'll take a look at it. I'll
Um,
take a look at it.
yeah, but I just know I've
I mean,
had that. I
so
had
it's
one.
so difficult to stay on top of absolutely everything.
Yes. Oh, I trust me. But doing this podcast helps me stay a little bit, meet people, so I have a little bit of a broader view. But that's good to hear. And then how do people follow you? How do they buy a node? How do they get involved? Do they want their business to sign up to your, um, conference call, telephony, video service? Like, help everyone help themselves.
Yeah. So the easiest way to follow the project is to go to datagram.network. The easiest, and that will give you everything that you need. There's links to the node sale right up at the top. You can join our Discord. I'm in there all the time talking to people. We have an extremely active community. If you're interested in following me personally, I'm Bitbender Brink on X, and I post fairly long form content. And I would also invite you to check out some of our streams. And in fact, I would love to invite you personally onto our DePIN Deep Dive. It's a podcast that we do. We try to do it every, depends on how busy we are. We're like slammed with TGE right now, so I haven't been as active on that as I would like. But what we essentially do is talk about interesting things in terms of decentralization. It is roughly structured around DePIN, but we sort of go pretty deep into everything. We had a great DePIN deep dive a few weeks back where we spent half of the show talking about space elevators and cutting edge space tech. So not really DePIN stuff, but more two interesting human beings having a conversation. Sort of style. You know.
Cool. Obviously, yeah, love to be on it, and likewise, love to have you on at one of our DePIN days. Looks like we missed you in Bangkok. We'll be in Buenos Aires. I don't know if you're going to be there for that DEF CON. Um,
I don't know. That seems
This
That
is far
seems
away.
like a lot. It's dude, getting from Asia to anywhere in South America is just an exercise in pain.
Yeah, and I believe that. I believe it.
But I'll see what I can do. I'll see what I can do.
Listen,
How about that?
we'll listen. But it's been great to have you on, and let's stay in touch. And I want to come back on maybe after you have a TGE and talk about kind of where you are and kind of the progress you made.
Would love to come on and talk anytime you want, man.
Fantastic. Thanks for being on, Jason. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it, man.
The DePIN Podcast, the place where we explore real-world use cases unlocked by crypto. That's all for today. Thanks for watching to the end. If you enjoyed this episode, please help us grow. Add a like, add a comment. And of course, if you have anyone you think we should be talking to or have on this podcast, either leave a comment there or reach out. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.